She didn't even look at it before he threw it in. That's the part I keep coming back to. My son Marcus didn't examine the quilt, didn't unfold it, didn't hold it up to the light. He just took it from my hands, turned to the fireplace, and dropped it in like it was a paper towel. Like 40 years of his mother's love weighed nothing at all. And 58 people watched him do it. Some of them clapped. Not everyone, but some. My name is Raymond Collier. I'm 68 years old. I spent 41 years making furniture in a workshop behind my house in Decatur, Georgia, outside Atlanta, for those who don't know it. Dining tables, rocking chairs, bookshelves, a life built entirely with my hands. And standing in my son's $4.3 million home in Buckhead, watching a fire eat the last thing my wife Evelyn ever made, I felt the most useful I had felt in years. The moment I reached in and pulled it back out. But I'm getting ahead of myself. I want to tell you this story because I've been carrying it for 4 months, and it's heavier than I expected. Not the bad parts, those I could manage. The part that's heavy is the love. The part that turns out to have been there all along, sewn so carefully into the seams that none of us saw it until a pair of trembling hands found it under a cutting table in a quilt shop on a Saturday morning. Let me take you back to the beginning. Marcus threw the housewarming party on a Saturday in March. He'd moved into the Buckhead house 2 weeks earlier, 6 bedrooms, a home theater, a kitchen designed by a firm that flew in from New York. My son is a cardiothoracic surgeon at Emory. He is very good at what he does. He is also very aware that he is very good at what he does. The party had 58 guests and 4 catering staff in matching linen shirts. There was a champagne tower, an actual champagne tower, the kind you see in movies set in the 1920s. I wore my good jacket, the corduroy one Evelyn had given me for our 35th anniversary. It smelled faintly of cedar from hanging in our closet, and I kept pressing my sleeve to my face because that cedar smell was the closest I could get to her anymore. My grandson Elijah was already there when I arrived. He's 7 years old, skinny as a fence post, with his grandmother's eyes and a laugh that sounds exactly like hers when something surprises her. He came running when he saw me, sneakers squeaking on the imported tile, and grabbed my arm with both hands. "Grandpa, is that the blanket Grandma made? Is that the one with the moons?" "It's the one with the moons, buddy." He started pulling me toward the living room where Marcus was holding court with a group of men in blazers. My daughter-in-law Serena intercepted us first. Serena is 38, beautiful, precise, the kind of woman who speaks in complete sentences at all times, even when she's nervous. She looked at the quilt under my arm and something passed across her face. Not unkindness exactly. More like the expression you make when someone brings a casserole dish to a catered event. "Raymond, how sweet." She said it the way you say it when you don't mean it. Evelyn made it for Elijah. She finished it 3 days before she passed. She wanted him to have it. Marcus appeared at my shoulder. He had a glass of bourbon, which I noticed, and the particular brightness in his eyes that comes 2 glasses in. "Dad." His voice had that note in it, the careful, controlled tone he uses in professional settings when something is inconvenient. "What is that?" "Your mother's quilt. For Elijah." Marcus looked at the quilt, then at Elijah, who was already reaching for it, then at his guests, several of whom had gone quiet. I don't know how to explain what happened next except to say that the whole room seemed to tilt slightly, the way a boat tips when too much weight shifts to one side. Marcus took the quilt from my hands, not gently, and said, without lowering his voice, "That doesn't belong in this house, Dad." And he walked 3 steps to the stone fireplace, opened the glass panel, and set it inside. The fire caught the corner immediately. Elijah screamed. Not a child's tantrum, a sound that had grief in it and betrayal. "Daddy, no! Grandma made that. She promised me." Marcus turned back to his guests, children and their attachments. He smiled, the kind of smile that costs something. "More champagne?" I didn't move for a moment. Honestly, I didn't. I want to be truthful with you about that. I stood there while my wife's last gift burned, and I felt something so enormous and so cold that for about 4 seconds I could not make my body respond. Maybe you've been there, in a room full of people who are pretending not to see something awful, where you're so shocked you become briefly invisible inside yourself. Then I walked to the fireplace. I opened the glass panel, reached in, and took the quilt back with my bare hands. The fire had been at one corner for maybe 30 seconds. The outer fabric had caught blackened, curled, ruined at the edge, but the thick batting underneath had slowed the burn. I smothered what was left against the marble floor. The pain in my palms was immediate and sharp and clean, nothing like what was happening in my chest. I wrapped the quilt under my arm. I looked at my son. "Your mother left Elijah more than a blanket, Marcus. You just tried to burn your boy's inheritance." He stared at me. "What does that mean?" I didn't answer. I knelt down next to Elijah, who was crying into Serena's dress while Serena scrolled her phone. I pressed my forehead to his. Grandpa has it safe, buddy, just like Grandma wanted. Then I left. The drive back to Decatur took 35 minutes. The quilt sat on the passenger seat smelling like smoke. My hands were starting to blister where the fire had touched them 2nd degree on 2 fingers, a line of burn across my right palm. I should have been thinking about the emergency room. Instead, I was thinking about Evelyn in the hospital bed we'd set up in the living room, in the last weeks, when she still had her voice but it was going thin. Raymond. She had grabbed my wrist with surprising force for a woman fighting stage 3 pancreatic cancer. Promise me you'll give this quilt to Elijah yourself, not Marcus. To Elijah, in person. Make sure he gets to hold it. I promise. She looked at me for a long moment. Her eyes were still completely hers, even then. There's more in it than stitches, she said. When you need to understand it, you will. She died 9 days later. 4:30 in the morning. A Tuesday. I sat in my truck in my own driveway for a long time before I went inside. That night, I spread the quilt across the kitchen table under the overhead light. Evelyn had made it in a traditional North Star pattern, deep blue and ivory, 5 pointed stars repeating across the surface. She'd won 3 ribbons at the DeKalb County Crafts Fair with her quilts. She took her craft seriously. But this one was different from the others, in ways I hadn't noticed until now. The batting was uneven thicker in certain star squares than others. The binding along one edge had a double fold I'd never seen her use before, and when I pressed certain panels between my fingers, there was something underneath, not just fabric. Dorothy, I said. Then I caught myself, because my wife's name was Evelyn, not Dorothy, and I realized I was so tired I'd confused my own grief for a moment. I pressed my burned hand flat on the kitchen table and breathed. Evelyn, I said. What did you put inside? Saturday morning, I drove to a quilt shop on Ponce de Leon called Thread and Memory. The owner was a woman named Gloria Hutchins, mid-60s, sharp eyes, reading glasses on a beaded chain. She had been Evelyn's quilting partner for 18 years. The bell over the door had barely stopped chiming before she looked at the quilt in my arms and took off her glasses. Oh, Raymond. She came around the counter without another word and spread the quilt across her work table. For 10 minutes, she didn't speak. She ran her fingers along every seam, pressing, feeling, following the path of each stitch with the careful attention of someone reading a language they hadn't spoken in a while. She stopped at the center star, the largest one. This batting is wrong, she said. She pulled a seam ripper from a ceramic jar. This section is over an inch thick. Evelyn didn't make mistakes. She opened the stitching along one edge. Her hand disappeared inside. What she pulled out was a clear plastic sleeve, sealed on all 4 sides. My heart made a sound. Inside the sleeve were documents. Thick, official-looking papers with notary seals and attorney signatures. Gloria set them on the table and stepped back as if the papers had heat coming off them. I picked up the first one. It was a property deed. Walton County, Georgia. 280 acres of undeveloped rural land east of Monroe, held in an irrevocable trust, registered to Elijah Marcus Webb, my grandson. Evelyn's signature at the bottom. Dated August 2017. The second document was another deed. 95 acres adjoining the first parcel. Same trust, same signature. The third was a letter from an estate attorney in Athens, Georgia, confirming the trust structure and appraised land value as of 2020. 375 acres total. Gloria was already on her phone. Her face went very still, the way faces go when numbers become too large to process casually. Raymond. She looked up. Comparable acreage along that corridor, rural land east of Monroe, with road access, sold last year for between $60,000 and $80,000 an acre. I stared at her. She did the math twice. At $60,000, that's $22 million. At 80, it's close to $30 million. I sat down on the stool behind me. Not because I chose to, because my legs decided. She found more documents inside 3 other star squares, each one sealed in the same clear plastic, each one a chapter of a story Evelyn had never told me. Beginning in 1989, 4 years after Marcus was born, she had begun buying small parcels of rural Georgia land. 5 acres, 8 acres, never more than she could afford from her shifts as an ICU nurse, and the overtime she volunteered for every chance she got. An elderly farmer named Cornelius Tate had been selling his land off in sections as his health declined. Evelyn had been his wife's home care nurse for 2 years. He gave her favorable pricing because she had held his wife's hand through something he couldn't. Evelyn bought whenever she had savings, patiently, quietly, over 33 years, never once mentioning it to me. For 33 years, my wife got up at 5:15 every morning, put on her nursing scrubs, drove to Northside Hospital, came home smelling like antiseptic and institutional coffee, and was secretly building our grandson a future worth $20-something million. I didn't know whether to laugh or put my head down on Gloria's work table and sob. Gloria found one more thing in the final star square. A letter. Evelyn's handwriting, the particular slant she had, slightly left-leaning. The way her capital E always opened too wide. "My dearest Elijah," it began, "this land is yours alone. I bought it piece by piece for your whole daddy's lifetime, using money I saved from nursing overtime and skipping luxuries I never needed anyway. I didn't tell anyone because land grows best in silence, just like children do. If your father values this quilt, it means he still knows what love looks like. If he doesn't, then you'll need this land to build a life that doesn't depend on his approval. Grandma loves you past counting. Past the stars I stitched for you. Forever." Gloria read it over my shoulder. "Your wife," she said quietly, "was the most patient person I have ever known in my life. He tried to burn $25 million because it didn't match the throw pillows. I know, Raymond, I know. I will be honest with you right now, honest in the way you can be when you've been carrying something for a while and you're finally setting it down. There's a part of me that wanted to let that be the whole story. The irony is poetic enough, isn't it? The rich son throws the poor father's gift into the fire and doesn't know he just tried to incinerate a fortune. Story over. Justice delivered by accident. But that wasn't the real story. Not yet. The real story started Monday, when I sat across from an attorney named Patricia Malone in her office on Peachtree Street, downtown Atlanta, 12th floor, view of the skyline my son had come to think of as his birthright. Patricia specialized in estate law and family advocacy. She had kind eyes and a direct manner, and she read through everything twice before she spoke. These deeds are legitimate. The trust is irrevocable and bulletproof. Evelyn used a licensed trust attorney in Athens. You're named trustee. Marcus has no claim. She paused in a way that meant the next part was going to be difficult. But your son is in serious financial trouble. She pulled a folder from her desk. Marcus Webb, Chief of Cardiothoracic Surgery at Emory University Hospital, $750,000 annual salary. Also, 2 mortgages on the Buckhead property, credit lines exhausted, a pending malpractice complaint filed by a family named the Okafor family, alleging Marcus operated on their father while impaired. The hospital settled. The family is pursuing a separate civil case. If they prevail, and if the medical board opens an investigation, Marcus could lose his license. Impaired? You mean drinking? The complaint alleges he smelled of alcohol and showed slowed response times during the procedure. She said it carefully. I thought about the bourbon at 3 in the afternoon, the brightness in his eyes. She continued. If Marcus learns about the land, and I think he already suspects something, based on what he said at the party, his first move will be to come after your role as trustee. He'll try to have you declared incompetent. He'll petition to have himself appointed in your place. Then he controls the trust. He controls the land. He controls Elijah's future. My burned hands were folded in my lap. He'd use the fireplace incident, reaching in with bare hands. Exactly as you'd predict. He'll call it erratic behavior, and use it to paint you as a danger to yourself. He probably already has a psychiatrist picked out. She slid a business card across the table. Winston Carr, private investigator, former GBI. If your son has things he's hiding, and men in his position usually do, Winston will find them. 3 days later, Winston called me from his car parked outside the Buckhead house. Raymond, I need you to sit down before I tell you what I found. The file Winston assembled over the following week made me feel like I was reading about a stranger. Marcus had moved $1.8 million to an offshore account in the Cayman Islands over the preceding 5 months, transferred in amounts just below federal reporting thresholds. He had booked 3 one-way flights to Grand Cayman, himself, Elijah, and a woman named Tanya Bridgman, a pharmaceutical sales representative, 31 years old, who had been his girlfriend for 9 months. The affair had started at a cardiology conference in Charlotte. He's taking my grandson out of the country with a woman who doesn't know him. It gets worse, Winston said. He sent me text messages obtained through legal discovery. James, sorry, Marcus to Tanya, 6 days ago. Everything's confirmed. We leave the 12th. New start. Tanya's response. What about Elijah? Does he have to come? Marcus. He comes. Serena's useless without the money I'm pulling. But the kid has a trust worth millions. Evelyn left something. I don't know what yet, but I need to be the one who controls it. Tanya's response. Millions. Okay, yes, bring him. I sat in my kitchen with the phone pressed to my ear, not speaking. He wasn't taking Elijah because he loved him. He was taking Elijah because Elijah was worth $25 million. Winston sent me school records next. 14 months of notes from Elijah's second-grade teacher and the school counselor at Brookhaven Academy. Elijah Webb, age 7, displays persistent anxiety around academic performance, expresses fear of parental reactions to grades, frequently asks if his work is good enough before turning it in, flinches at raised adult male voices, asked if he could stay at school over spring break. 14 months. I want to stop here and ask you something directly. If you have ever watched a child you love go quiet in ways children shouldn't go quiet, if you've ever noticed a little one making themselves smaller, holding still, waiting to see which version of a parent walks in the room, then you already know the particular kind of grief I felt reading those clinical, careful school notes. It doesn't make a sound, that grief. It's the loudest thing I've ever felt. Winston had one more thing. Security camera footage from the lobby of Marcus's building, obtained through the property management company. Elijah coming home from school with a drawing he'd made in art class. He was showing it to his father. A family portrait, 4 figures in crayon. "Look, Daddy, it's us." Marcus glanced at it. "Why is everyone the same size? My teacher said it was creative." "Your teacher gives participation trophies." Marcus handed the drawing back and walked ahead. "When you make something worth looking at, bring it to me." Elijah stood in the lobby holding the drawing for a moment. Then he folded it in half, very carefully, and put it in his backpack. He walked down the hall with his shoulders pulled in, making himself small. Winston stopped the video. I couldn't speak for a while. Patricia filed emergency motions the following morning. Winston tracked Marcus's every movement. The evidence assembled like bricks in a wall. The psychiatrist Marcus had hired to declare me incompetent, a doctor, Franklin Cruz, had been disciplined in 2 states for falsified evaluations in previous conservatorship cases. Marcus had wired him $28,000. 7 times his standard fee. When Marcus's business partner at the surgical practice was approached by investigators, he revealed that Marcus had offered him a financial incentive to sign a statement about my supposedly erratic behavior at the housewarming, witness tampering. Then Serena called. Wednesday, 7 a.m., while I was making eggs. Her voice was stripped of its precision for once. "Raymond, I know about the land. Marcus found a reference in some of Evelyn's old papers. I don't have details, but I know it's worth a great deal." She paused. "He's leaving me. He's taking Elijah and some woman to the Cayman Islands. I have evidence, hotel receipts, photographs, account numbers. I met her at a coffee shop in Brookhaven. She came overdressed, which told me how scared she was. She wanted half of Elijah's inheritance in exchange for her testimony. She wanted to send Elijah to boarding school in New England. He was 7 years old, so she could, as she put it, rebuild her life with adequate resources. The recording captured all of it. I won't pretend this was a comfortable thing to gather. My son's wife, my grandson's mother, sitting across from me in a Buckhead coffee shop calculating what a 7-year-old boy was worth. There's a version of this story where I feel sorry for Serena. She was married to a man who was running from everything, and she saw the exit closing. I understand that. But understanding something isn't the same as accepting it. Elijah wasn't a line item. 2 days before the scheduled hearing, Winston called at 11 at night. Marcus changed the flights. They leave tomorrow. 9:15 to Grand Cayman. Patricia had an emergency custody petition filed by 6 a.m. The hearing was at 10 o'clock in a Fulton County family courtroom, dark wood paneling, fluorescent light, the particular hum of a building where hard things happen every day. Judge Renata Simmons presiding. She was known to be exacting, unsentimental, and fiercely protective of children in cases involving financial manipulation. Marcus sat with his attorney projecting wounded concern, the loving son, worried about his confused, aging father. His attorney's opening was brisk and confident. Raymond Collier, 68, showing signs of cognitive decline, living alone, prone to dangerous behavior, a man who had thrust his bare hands into a burning fireplace in front of dozens of witnesses. They put Dr. Cruz on the stand. He delivered a rehearsed assessment of my supposed mental deterioration with practiced sincerity. Patricia stood for cross-examination. "Dr. Cruz, your standard fee for consultation is $4,000. Is that correct?" "Yes." She submitted the bank transfer records. $28,000 from Marcus Webb to Dr. Franklin Cruz, 7 times his standard rate. She submitted disciplinary records from Oklahoma and Tennessee documenting sanctions for falsified evaluations in prior conservatorship cases. The room changed. Marcus took the stand. He was composed, articulate, grieving son in a difficult situation. Patricia waited. "Mr. Webb, You claim your father became disoriented and distressed at a Home Depot on Memorial Drive on February 14th. You described it as a confused episode requiring staff assistance. That's correct. I was worried. She pulled location data from my phone. I had been in my workshop all day February 14th. She pulled security camera logs from the Home Depot in question. No record of my presence. You fabricated this incident, didn't you? I may have misremembered the date. She played the phone recording from the night Marcus had called me. His voice in the courtroom, "Your mother was dying anyway. The treatment had a 20% success rate. It would have been throwing money away. Evelyn's life. Throwing money away." She played the lobby footage. Elijah and the crayon drawing. Elijah folding it in half. Elijah making himself small. She entered the school counselor's notes. 14 months. An itemized account of a little boy's fear. She played Serena's recording from the coffee shop. I never wanted to be a hands-on mother. That's what boarding schools are for. She entered the flight records. 3 one-way tickets. Tonight, Grand Cayman. Judge Simmons looked at Marcus for a long moment before she spoke. This petition, she said, is not a son's concern for an elderly parent. It is a deliberate attempt to seize a child's inheritance through the legal system. It is elder abuse dressed in the language of care. Petition denied with prejudice. I am referring this matter to the district attorney for investigation of fraud, perjury, witness tampering, and financial exploitation. Based on documented evidence of emotional abuse, parental unfitness, and confirmed flight risk, I am granting emergency temporary custody of Elijah Webb to his grandfather, Raymond Collier, effective immediately. Passports are to be surrendered. Neither parent is to have unsupervised contact with the child pending full investigation. The gavel came down. In the hallway outside, in the hard Atlanta afternoon sun, Marcus was cuffed. His surgeon's hands, steady hands, hands that had repaired human hearts bound behind his back. He looked at me once. Whatever was in his eyes, I couldn't name it. I looked away first. If I'm being honest with you, and I want to be, because you've stayed this far, and you deserve honesty, I didn't feel what I expected to feel in that hallway. I thought I'd feel vindicated. I felt tired and sad. The kind of sad that lives below everything else, the kind that doesn't move even when the right thing happens. Because a man I raised, a man I taught to build a birdhouse and ride a bike and say please and thank you had to be led away in handcuffs from a family court building. That's not a victory. That's a wound with a different shape. An hour later, a caseworker brought Elijah to the courthouse parking lot. He had his backpack and a stuffed giraffe he'd had since he was 2. When he saw me, he ran. "Grandpa, are we going somewhere?" "We're going home, buddy. To my house. The yellow kitchen, and the workshop, and Grandma's quilt." He put his arms around my neck, and I held him there in the parking lot while people walked around us, and I felt his heartbeat against mine, small and fast and steady. "Can we look for the moon shapes tonight, in the quilt?" "Every single one." 3 months have passed since that afternoon. Elijah sleeps through the night now. It took about 2 weeks, but it came. His teacher called last month to say he'd been laughing during reading time, that he'd started showing his drawings to the other kids without asking if they were good enough first. Small victories. The ones that cost the most to earn. We donated $1.2 million from the trust to the Pediatric Oncology Unit at Children's Healthcare of Atlanta in Evelyn's name. Elijah signed the papers in his careful, still developing handwriting, his tongue pressed to the corner of his mouth the way it does when he concentrates. We set aside another $1 million for scholarships for kids in the foster system, children who need the second chances Evelyn always believed were possible for anyone who got one. Marcus wrote me a letter from county jail. I've read it many times, looking for the manipulations, finding what might be something else. "Dad, I've spent the last 11 weeks thinking about who I became. I know you raised me to know better. I know Mom spent her whole life showing me what love was supposed to look like, and I chose none of it. I chose the marble and the champagne and the approval of people who drove away the moment the handcuffs went on. I'm in therapy. I don't expect you to believe me yet. I don't expect Elijah to forgive me. I just wanted you to know that I finally understand what I threw into that fire. I'm sorry I wasn't the son she raised. I keep the letter in the drawer next to Evelyn's photograph. I'm not ready yet to open that door more than a crack. But for Elijah's sake, I'm leaving it cracked. Some light gets through a crack. It has to be enough for now." Saturday afternoon, Elijah and I were in the workshop. I was teaching him how to use a hand plane on a piece of cherry wood. He had both hands on the tool and the fierce concentration he gets when something matters to him. "Grandpa, why did Daddy throw Grandma's blanket in the fire?" I set my tools down. I want to be a person who gives real answers, not safe ones. Your father forgot what things were worth, I said. He thought the most expensive things were the most valuable. And he forgot that the things made with love cost something different. Not money. Time. Attention. The decision to show up for someone quietly, for a long time, without asking for credit. Elijah was quiet. Then, is Daddy sad now? I think so. I think he's starting to understand what he lost. Good. He looked back at the wood. Not in a mean way. But maybe if he's sad enough, he'll remember. Maybe so, buddy. That night, after dinner and homework, and 2 chapters of a book about a boy who builds a boat in his backyard, I tucked Elijah in, under Evelyn's quilt. The burned corner was still there, imperfectly repaired, the scar of what his father had tried to do. Elijah touched it every night. He didn't avoid it. Grandpa, this is the best thing I own. You know why? Tell me. Because Grandma made it with love. And you can't buy love anywhere. I had to turn away for a moment. Every single morning, that boy wakes up under a quilt full of stars and secrets, and 33 years of a woman's quiet patience. And he knows he is loved exactly as he is. Not for his grades. Not for his earnings potential. Not for what he might be worth someday. For exactly the 7-year-old he is right now, with his crooked handwriting and his giraffe named Gerald, and his absolute certainty that burnt toast tastes better with enough butter. Evelyn, I tell her sometimes, to the photograph, to the workshop, to the yellow kitchen she insisted on painting, even though I said yellow was impractical. I kept the promise. Our boy is safe. Now I'm asking you something. If this story made you feel something, if you have a grandparent, or a grandchild, or a parent, or if you have ever been the person holding something precious in a room full of people who couldn't see its value, drop a number in the comments. 1, if you think Raymond was right to reach into that fire. 2, if you think he should have let the courts handle it without the courtroom confrontation. 3, if you would have done something I haven't even thought of yet. I genuinely want to know. Tell me what time it is, where you are, and where you're watching from. I read every single one. And if you've ever experienced something like this, someone trying to take what wasn't theirs, disguised as concern, tell me about it. This comment section is a place where that story can be told. If this story meant something to you, please subscribe and stay with us. We find the stories that don't get told loudly enough, and we tell them with everything we have. Every like, every share, every subscriber makes it possible for us to keep going. We're grateful for every single one of you. This is a fictional story inspired by real emotional experiences, fully rewritten and reimagined in Atlanta, Georgia, to create original content. Any resemblance to real people or events is coincidental.